Hello everyone and welcome to Sunday Politics on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale.
And I'm Emana Amawe.
There have been talks about Nigeria having an overbloated size of government. Many have also criticized the federal system we currently operate that is too expensive. An easy recall of Nigeria's history often come into play when people talk about a compact government like we had in the regional government that was seen as very competitive. First, it was 3 regions and their government they had before the Midwestern region was created. Then we had the Western region, the Northern region, and the Eastern region, making 4 altogether. After the Civil War, and when the Murtala Muhammad and Obasanjo government came in through a coup, removing Yakubu Gowon military government, we had 12 states and then 36 states as we have now. It's been developing over the years. More states, more elected officials, more offices, more personnel to run them, and more monies to spend to maintain the structures and the human resources, leading to what is now seen as an overbloated government. At a recent forum, precisely the Oba Adetona lecture, the former central bank governor and the Emir of Kano, His Eminence Muhammadu Sanusi, says at a time when Nigeria is in a dire economic situation and overbloated public offices and government spells doom.
Well, yes, indeed. Let's just take a look at the what the Emir of Kano, His Eminence Muhammad Sanusi, had to say about Nigeria restructuring its political system.
That when you think of really reflect the problems of this country, where we seem to turn common sense on its head, you sometimes wonder if anyone needs to tell any group of people that if you're a poor country, you do not need 36 governors, 36 deputy governors, each with 30 members of the House of Assembly, each with commissioners, each with advisors, each with special assistants, a president, a vice president, 36 ministers, special advisors, a bicameral federal legislature, and so on and so on. And that simple arithmetic would tell you that if you have that structure, you are first of all doomed to spending 80–90% of everything you earn maintaining public offices. It's really common sense, but it seems to be a problem for us to understand it. And I do remember as governor of Central Bank, when I raised this issue, about 80% of government revenue being used to maintain 1 million public offices, leaving 20% for the 166 million Nigerians. My own government came out and disowned that statement and said, in fact, the federal government is trying to recruit more people. So the situation we are in is not a situation that was not unforeseen. And I think what Professor Mabogunje is saying to us is, let us go back to basics and basic common sense. Let us tailor our political system to the level of development and the resources of the country. Today we have GDP growth of 2%. Those are the latest figures we have. And we are almost officially in recession. So you have a growing population, you have reduced government revenues, and you have a cost structure. Accountants will talk about overheads, fixed costs, because whatever we do every month, month after month, we have to pay the salaries and allowances of these human beings by the Constitution.
Well, that's it there. The Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi, talking about what he thinks about the situation of the Nigerian economy, considering the present political structure of Nigeria. Which way out? Well, let's bring into the conversation now a lawyer, a civil rights activist, and a policy analyst. Mr. Clement Nwako joins us from our Abuja studio. Many thanks for coming on the program. Well, tell me, Mr. Nwako, with what we have on the ground, Nigeria currently operates a presidential system of government. and a federal system. Of course, we had a parliamentary system in the First Republic. Do you think that the current system is expensive to run?
Well, certainly the current system is expensive to run. Nigeria's problem is, of course, complicated by the fact that we're dealing with two issues. One, the system. Second, the people who run the system. That mix is not a very good mix at all. We certainly need a system that means that you have less government, you have less citizens, less an excessive use of resources to run government. But worst of all, I think, is really the fact that you do have today officials who run government with a lot of impunity and a lot of concern about themselves rather than about the citizens they serve. But certainly you do need to tinker with what exists in terms of the structure of government. 36 states, several of whom cannot run themselves, run by governors, a lot of who do not care about proper use of public resources. You really have disaster waiting to happen.
Well, let's take a moment, and when we return, we seem to be having some audio hitches with connecting with Abuja studio. But when we return, we talk more on the program. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on the program. Don't forget you can be part of the conversation. What we're talking about is the cost of governance. Is the current political system we operate in Nigeria too expensive to bear considering the economic situation in the country? Go to Twitter. It's at CTV Politics on Channels Television. And of course, the hashtag there to track the conversation. Hashtag Politics Today. Oh well, let's go back to our Abuja studio now. With what we have on our hands, Mr. Wanko, tell us what exactly do you will suppose that will fit into our current ethnic, cultural frame-up as a country?
Well, I think that you really have a situation now where Nigeria needs to sit down and decide what it needs to pay or what it can pay or what it can afford to run government. You have three tiers of government. You have the government at the local government level, you have the state governments, 36 of them, and then you have the government at the national level. Part of the reason why this is so expensive as well is the privileges and the perquisites of office. There are too many benefits from people who run or hold political offices. Too much money is spent to feed and fund their personal inclinations and personal tendencies. Very little then is left to provide for running of government and providing citizens' needs and demands. Certainly when you watch the way local governments function, and when we look at local governments today, we really are seeing local governments that are virtually non-existent in terms of administration. The whole idea of governments at a local level where citizens feel government at that level has disappeared, with state governors refusing to allow local governments to function. You also have a situation where at the state level, so much is being spent by state governors to run their expenses. You see governors, some traveling out of the country with more than 100 aides, several of them with so many privileges through security votes and really through their own benefits, running privileges for themselves. And at the national level as well, you do have quite a lot, both at the executive and legislative level. So really, you do have a very, very hugely funded and recurrent expenditure to keep these governments in place. And I think that this is a time for Nigeria to sit down and decide really whether we can afford all of these expenses. And when you look at it, it goes really to the question which is very fundamental about government in Nigeria. How is government structured, and how should government be able to respond to the dwindling revenues that we have in the country today?
All right, Mr. Nwankwo, only recently, very recently, some Nigerians were gathered to consider the Nigerian constitution under President Jonathan's regime. Do you think the recommendations of that national conference should be adopted, or should the country embark on a fresh journey altogether?
I'm not sure that Mr. Nwankwo is able to hear you there. But if you can hear, the question actually is, there was a national conference on the President Jonathan's government, which he set up, and the recommendation passed on to him. And the question was, would you suggest that the recommendation be passed, or we start another process entirely, since we are in this situation as a country?